Hi, this is James Sensil Bandakilio of BSN 2B from University of Resource System College of Nursing, and I'm going to explain the evolution of technology, but in a more creative way. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Our story starts quietly, not with machines, not with electricity, not even with invention in the way we usually imagine it. It starts with something almost invisible, something so ordinary that we rarely question it. A thought. 5 years ago, in a place we call Mesopotamia, human beings carried everything they knew inside their heads. If a farmer understood the flooding cycles of the river, that knowledge lived only in his memory. If a healer discovered that a certain plant could reduce fever, that knowledge survived only if she could pass it on word by word to someone else. There was no backups, no copies, no archives, only fragile, imperfect human memory. And memory, as we know, is unreliable. It forgets, it distorts, it changes stories over time. So knowledge back then didn't just fade, it vanished completely. Entire techniques, rituals, and observations disappeared the moment the last person who remembered them died. Imagine that level of loss. Imagine entire discoveries being erased not because they were wrong, but because no one was left to remember them. That was the natural state of information for most of human history. And then, something changed. Not dramatically at first. There were no grand announcement, no moment where people realized that there was really changed. Instead, it began with something almost boring, which is record keeping. In ancient times, around 3000 BCE, merchants and administrators faced a problem. Trade was growing complex. Crops were being stored, exchanged, and passed. People needed a way to track quantities. How many sacks of grain? How many livestock? Who owed what to whom? Memory was no longer enough, so they began pressing marks into wet clay, creating what we now recognize as early form of writing. At first, these marks weren't even words in the way we understand them today. They were symbols. A mark might mean ship, another might mean 10, another might indicate ownership. These clay tablets were then dried under the sun, hardening into permanent records. Something incredible, subtle, but revolutionary. For the first time, information was no longer confined to the human mind. It existed outside of it. It had been transferred, externalized into the physical world. And what's fascinating is that the people who did this probably didn't see it as a philosophical breakthrough. They saw it as a practical solution. They just wanted to keep better records. But in solving that small problem, they created something bigger than they intended. They gave information a new form of existence. A tablet could sit in a storage room for years, decades even, and still contain knowledge without anyone actively remembering it. The knowledge no longer depended on a living brain to persist. It could outlast its creator. A scribe could write something down, die years later, and yet his thoughts, his record, would still remain, waiting for someone else to read them. After writing had already allowed information to survive beyond the human mind, something else began to change. Information had learned how to exist, but existing was not enough. For thousands of years after writing, information remained mostly passive. It could be stored, preserved, passed down, but it still needed humans to interpret it, to act on it, to give meaning in the physical world. And for a long time, that line remained untouched until the 19th century during a period we now call the Industrial Revolution, where that boundary began to collapse in a way people didn't fully understand at the time. In France, a man named Joseph Marie Jacquard was not trying to redefine the nature of reality. He wasn't thinking about philosophy or information or control. He was trying to solve a problem in textile production. Weaving intricate patterns into fabric was an incredibly skilled and time-consuming task. It required trained artisans who had to manually control threads to produce complex designs. The more detailed the pattern, the more difficult the process. Mistakes were costly, efficiency was limited, and like many inventions in history, the goal was simple: make it faster, make it easier, make it more reliable. But the solution Jacquard introduced was unlike anything before it. Instead of relying entirely on human skill during the weaving process, he designed a machine that could be instructed using punch card. Thin sheets with holes arranged in specific patterns. Each hole represent a decision, whether a thread should be lifted or not. When these cards were fed into the loom, the machine would follow the pattern automatically, weaving complex designs with precision, consistency, and speed. At first glance, it looks like a mechanical improvement, just another step in industrial efficiency. But if you slow down and really examine what's happening here, something far more profound is taking place. For the first time in history, abstract symbols were directly controlling a physical process, not guiding a human, not suggesting an action, but controlling it. The loom did not understand the pattern, it did not know what a flower or a geometric design was, it simply followed instructions encoded in a symbolic system, and yet the result was real. A piece of fabric with a complex design that would have taken hours, even days, for a human to produce manually. This is a completely new relationship between information and the physical world. Writing allowed information to exist, but the Jacquard loom allowed information to act. And this is where the story becomes more interesting, because once again, people at that time did not fully grasp the implications. To them, this was a machine that improved productivity, but underneath that practical benefit, a deeper shift had occurred. A loom demonstrated that reality could be instructed by encoded instructions, not by human intuition moment, but by predefined symbolic patterns. In a sense that machines separated the thinking from the doing, and if you think about it, that's incredibly powerful and slightly unsettling. Because what this means is that a physical world can now be influenced directly by information systems that do not require understanding. So if information can act through machines, then the next question is, can it move faster? Can it spread further? Can it operate beyond the limits of physical proximity? And as the story continues, we'll see that answer to that question. which changes everything. By this point, something has already changed. Information has learned how to survive outside the human mind, and it has learned how to act through machines. But there is still one limitation it cannot escape: distance. Because no matter how powerful writing is, no matter how advanced machines become, information is still slow. A clay tablet has to be physically carried. A written message has to travel by horse, by ship, by human effort. Even with the Jacquard loom, the instructions must be physically present. Information can exist, but it cannot move freely. Not yet. And if you think about it, this limitation shaped entire civilizations. News of a war could take weeks, even months to reach another region. Decisions were delayed, responses were slow, information was powerful, yes, but it was also trapped by geography. It could not outrun the physical world. It was bound to it. And for a long time, that seemed like an unchangeable rule, that information, no matter how abstract, must always move at the speed of the human body, or the vehicles human create. But in the 1840s, that assumption begins to collapse, and once again, it does not happen with a dramatic philosophical announcement. It happens through a practical problem: communication, a faster communication. In the United States, a man named Samuel Morse worked on a system that could transmit messages using electricity, not by physically moving objects but by sending signals through wires. At first, this idea sounds almost too simple. Electricity flows through a wire and that flow can be turned on and off. But Samuel Morse created a system where information should be encoded into patterns of signals: short pulses, long pulses, dots and dashes, what we now call Morse code. Each pattern representing a letter, each letter forming words, and each word forming meaning. But those patterns are not physical objects. They are not even clay tablets. They are not ink on paper, but they are sequences of electrical events. Information is no longer tied to a solid form. It becomes something that can exist as a pattern of energy. And once that happens, everything changes. Because the moment information becomes a signal, something it had never had before, which is a speed beyond human capability. A message now can travel vast distances almost instantly, limited only by the speed of electrical transmission. Cities that once separated by days of travel can now communicate in seconds. Think about that shift. For thousands of years, distance was dictated on the flow of information. Now suddenly, distance becomes almost irrelevant. The world, in a very sense, is shrink. Not physically, but informationally. And just like that, previous milestones people had at that time did not fully grasp the magnitude of that transformation. To many, the telegraph was simply a faster way to send messages, a technological convenience. But underneath the surface, something far more radical was happening. Information was no longer bound to objects. It no longer needed a physical carrier in the traditional sense. It could travel as a pattern, an abstract sequence moving through an invisible medium. And if you follow that idea carefully, it leads to a very unsettling realization that information is starting to detach, not just from humans, but from matter itself. Because when you send telegraph message, you are not sending a piece of paper from one place to another. You are not just moving object, you are recreating a pattern out at a distance. The original message stays where it is, but its structure is transmitted and reconstructed somewhere else. It's almost a duplication without physical transfer, and this idea, though it seems normal to us today, was deeply strange at that time, almost magical. In fact, many people reacted to the telegraph with a mix of fascination and fear. There were those who saw it as a miracle, a way to connect distant places instantly, but there are also those who found it unnatural, even unsettling. messages traveling invisibly through wires, information appearing in one place the moment it was sent from another. It challenged the intuitive understanding of how the world worked. It blurred the line between the physical and the abstract, and once again, that changes how information works. By now, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Information has learned how to survive beyond the human mind, how to act through machines, and how to move across vast distances almost instantly. But there's still one final boundary that seems untouchable, something so deeply tied to being human that for centuries, no one seriously questioned about it. Thought, thinking, the ability to reason, to decide, to process ideas. For most of history, this was considered uniquely human, almost sacred. Machines could assist, they could amplify strength, they could automate tasks, but they could not think. That was the line, that was the boundary. And then, in 1936, a young mathematician named Alan Turing quietly asked a question that would begin to erase that boundary. It wasn't a loud question. It didn't come with a dramatic declarations. In fact, it appeared in a highly technical paper filled with abstract symbols and logical arguments. But underneath that complexity was a simple, almost unsettling idea. What if thinking is not something mysterious or uniquely human, but simply a process, a steps, a sequence of operations that follow rules? Now, pause for a moment and consider that, because if thinking is just a process, then in theory, anything that can follow these steps could think, not in the emotional conscious sense we associate with human experience, but in a functional, operational sense. It could take input, apply rules, and produce output. And if that's possible, then the distinction between a thinking human and a non-thinking machine begins to blur. To explore this idea, Turing introduced a concept that at first glance seems almost absurdly simple. He imagined a machine, now known as the Turing machine, that consists of a tape divided into squares, a head that can read and write symbols on that tape, and a set of rules that tells the machine what to do based on what it reads. That's it. No complexity, no intelligence, no awareness. Just a system that reads a symbol, follows a rule, writes a new symbol, and moves left or right over and over again, step by step. And yet, here's the part that changes everything. Turing proved that this simple system, this almost primitive mechanism, could in theory perform any computation that any computer can do today. Any calculation, any algorithm, any logical operations. From basic arithmetic to complex simulations, all of it. Which leads to the conclusion that it is both elegant and deeply unsettling. Thinking, at least in a computational sense, is not magic. It is not mystical. It is not mechanical. And this is where the story takes a sharp turn, because up until this point, information depended on humans to interpret it, to give it meaning, to decide what to do next. And with Turing's idea, something fundamentally changes. The process of decision making itself can be encoded into a system. Now let's be clear, the Turing machine does not understand anything. It has no awareness, no consciousness, no intention, but that's precisely what makes it so powerful. It doesn't need to understand, it just needs to follow the rules perfectly. And if the rules are designed correctly, the outcome can appear intelligent. This is the moment where the illusion of thinking begins to emerge. And once that illusion is convincing enough, the distinction between real thinking and simulated thinking becomes harder to define. There's also a deeper, more controversial layer to this idea, because if machine can simulate thinking through rules, then what does this say about human thought? Are we fundamentally different, or are we also following patterns, biological processes, neural pathways, chemical reactions that obey rules we don't fully see? It's an uncomfortable question, one that fully challenged the way we understand ourselves, and it's a question that Turing's works forces us to confront whether we like it or not. And then he adds another layer of complexity and tension during this narrative. During World War II, he played a crucial role in breaking encrypted German communications, helping to shorten the war and save countless lives. His works on code-breaking machines demonstrated the practical power of mechanized logic, machines following rules to uncover hidden patterns in information. However, he was persecuted for his identity, subjected to chemical treatment, and ultimately died under circumstances that remains deeply troubling. There's a certain irony here. Someone who helped redefine the future of intelligence was not fully accepted by society he helped to protect, and that contrast between brilliance and rejection adds a human dimension to an otherwise abstract story. But returning to the central idea, Turing's concept introduces something entirely new to the evolution of technology. Information is no longer just surviving, acting, or moving. It is now participating in processes that resembles thinking. And once again, if we connect this to the theme of escape, this is perhaps the most significant step so far, because information is no longer just independent in terms of existence or movement. It is now independent in terms of processing. It no longer relies entirely on human minds to interpret or act on it. So what begins as a simple question, what does it mean to compute, leads to a transformation in how we understand both machines and ourselves. The Turing machine is not just a theoretical concept, it is a blueprint for a new kind of information. And once that line is blurred, the next question becomes unavoidable. If information can be processed, if it can stimulate thinking, if it can operate within a system of logic, then what exactly is information at its most fundamental level? And as the story moves forward, we will see that answer. By now, the transformation is almost complete. Information has learned how to survive beyond the human mind, how to act through machines, how to move across vast distances, and even how to simulate thinking through structured processes. But there is still one final question, one question that sits at the very core of everything we've been talking about. What is information really? Not how we use it, not how we store it, not how we transmit it, but what it actually is at its most fundamental level. Because up to this point, we've been treating information as something meaningful. We assume that meaning is essential, that information must mean something to exist. But what if that assumption is wrong? In 1948, a mathematician and engineer named Claude Shannon introduced a way of thinking that would completely redefine the concept of information. And like Turing, he didn't present it as a dramatic philosophical statement. He presented it as a technical solution to a practical problem. Static on a line, distortion in a signal, interference that could corrupt a message. The challenge was simple. How do you send information from one place to another accurately, even when the medium is imperfect? But the solution Shannon developed didn't just solve a communication problem, it stripped information down to its absolute core. He removed meaning from the equation entirely. Instead of asking, "What does this message mean?" he asked, "How much uncertainty does this message reduce. In other words, information is not about meaning, it is about unpredictability. The more unpredictable a message is, the more information it contains. And from this perspective, something profound happens. A message doesn't need to be understood to be considered information. It just needs to carry a pattern that can be distinguished from randomness. To formalize this idea, Shannon introduced the concept of the bit, short for binary digit. A bit is the smallest unit of information representing a choice between two possibilities, 0 or 1, yes or no, on or off. At first glance, this seems almost too simple. And then, how can something as complex as language, images, sound, or human thought be reduced to a series of binary choices? But that's exactly the point. Shannon showed that any kind of information can be encoded as a sequence of bits. A photograph becomes a grid of pixel values, a song becomes a waveform translated into numbers, a conversation becomes encoded text, everything becomes data, everything becomes pattern of zeros and ones. And this is where the story reaches its most unsettling realization, because once information is reduced to bits, meaning becomes optional. The system transmitting the data doesn't need to understand it. It doesn't need to interpret it. It doesn't need a care whether it's sending a love letter, a medical record, or meaningless noise. To the system, all of these are just sequences of bits. And that leads to a statement that feels almost uncomfortable when you really think about it. To a machine, a deeply emotional message and a completely random sequence of symbols are fundamentally the same. The difference exists only in the human mind, not in the information itself. Now pause and let that sink into you, because this idea completely separates information from human experience. Up to this point, even as information become more independent, we still assumed that its value was tied to meaning, but the theory removes the connection. Information becomes something abstract, something measurable, something that exists independently. It becomes a quantity, not a story, a structure, not an experience. And once that happens, information reaches a new level of independence. There's also a practical side to this transformation, one that explains why Shannon's idea becomes so influential. By focusing on bits and ignoring meaning, engineers could design systems that transmits data more efficiently and reliably. And if we connect this back to the larger narrative, the escape of information, this is the final transformation. Writing allowed information to survive, machines allowed it to act, the telegraph allowed it to move, Turing's idea allowed it to be processed, and now information theory allows it to exist in its most pure minimal form, completely detached from meaning, reduced to bits, capable of being stored, copied, transmitted, and transformed endlessly without needing to be understood at any stage. So when we ask, what is information? The answer is no longer simple. It is not just knowledge, not just meaning, not just communication. It is something more fundamental. And in that sense, the journey we've been following reaches its most complete form. Because once information becomes bits, once it becomes pure pattern, it is no longer limited by the things that once defined it. And from this point forward, the question is no longer how information evolves, but what role humans still play in a world where information no longer needs them in the same way. And now, in our contemporary world, we are confronting the ultimate questions of this journey. If information can exist without us, act without us, move without us, and even simulate reasoning without us, what does this mean for humanity? Are we masters of our creations, or are we caretakers of a force that has outgrown us? Some see utopia, instantaneous global knowledge, advanced AI solving problems that we cannot even imagine, a civilization powered by information's freedom. Others see danger, misinformation spreading faster than truth, machines making decisions we cannot explain, privacy disappearing as data flows beyond comprehension. It is in every sense the culmination of the story we began in the clay tablets, the moment when human control becomes incomplete and we are forced to reckon with the independence of information itself. And yet, there is a strange beauty in this evolution. Information is no longer just a tool, it is a mirror. It reflects our intellect, our creativity, our flaws, and our ambition. It is simultaneously ours and not ours, shaped by humans but not shaping us. We can still guide it, direct it, and build systems that align with human values, but the lesson of this journey is that information will always find ways to transcend the limitation we assume it must follow. Because it survives, it acts, it moves, it processes, it evolves, and perhaps in its own way, abstract, that teaches us what it means to be human in an era where information has finally reached or finally learned to be free.